Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. If you're a fan of amusement parks, even a casual fan, chances are you're familiar with the name Six Flags. For those who don't know, Six Flags is not the name of just one park, but rather the largest chain of amusement parks in North America. Up until this year, the company operated 15 parks, including some of the most popular on the continent. According to the Themed Entertainment Association, parks like Six Flags Magic Mountain near Los Angeles and Six Flags Great America near Chicago attracted over 3 million visitors each in 2023. Six Flags parks are generally not massive tourist destinations like Disney parks, but the parks are in close proximity to large metropolitan areas such as New York City, Mexico City, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Montreal. This is why the 15 parks have been visited by millions of people over the course of the last 60 years. This year, the Six Flags company received a major addition. The company merged with another amusement park chain called Cedar Fair, and while the name is not quite as popular as Six Flags parks, there is a great chance that most casual park fans are familiar with some of their most prominent locations, such as Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, and Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. These parks are also mostly regional, serving people from cities like Toronto or Minneapolis who want convenient access to some fun roller coasters. Now that Cedar Fair is owned by Six Flags, the Six Flags chain has 26 parks and over 250 roller coasters. This sounds great, and the parks do attract millions of visitors, but for the most part they don't come close to the popularity of other chains like Disney and Universal. Six Flags, and to a lesser extent Cedar Fair, has often been called the discount chain of theme parks. Other park chains have highly detailed architecture, immersive themed lands, and a focus on well-rounded entertainment offerings that convince people to stay for several days at a time. On the other hand, Six Flags parks have advertisements around the park, bare-bones theming, and rides that, while fun and thrilling, don't have the same wide appeal or iconography as those in other parks. This is why the family audience, which is the most lucrative market for theme parks, typically goes to Disney World or Universal instead of a Six Flags park, even in some cases where Six Flags is cheaper and easier to get to. At this point, Six Flags tends to attract a very different market: roller coaster enthusiasts. To clarify, roller coaster enthusiasts are people who love roller coasters and typically make an effort to visit amusement parks frequently in order to experience them. I am a part of this demographic, and I love Six Flags parks. The chain, especially now that Cedar Fair parks count, has some of the best roller coasters in the world. The majority of my favorite roller coasters are Six Flags, such as Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, Fury 325 at Carowinds, and Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. There is an audience that loves these types of high-speed, intense adventures. However, I think if you ask every person who's ever visited a theme park what their favorite roller coaster is, the winner would probably not be a Six Flags coaster, but rather Hagrid's Magical Creatures motorbike adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. This ride is hardly a thrilling experience. It offers mild intensity, but the biggest Six Flags roller coasters are over twice as fast and 7 times as tall. Despite this, Hagrid's is among the most famous and beloved theme park attractions ever, and it's still fairly new. I think in a decade or so, it will have the same iconography as Space Mountain, which is probably the current most popular or famous roller coaster, but those who've ridden Hagrid's seem to like that ride much more. This love of Hagrid's has even spilled over into the coaster community. For example, Taylor Bybee, the owner of the YouTube channel Coaster Studios, ranked Hagrid's as his 24th favorite roller coaster out of well over 1,000. Another example is the Golden Ticket Awards. Run by Amusement Today, this ceremony awards theme parks based on poll results from well-traveled amusement park fans. It's historically been very coaster enthusiast-driven, based on poll results favoring regional places like Cedar Point and Knoebels. And typically, Disney or Universal parks are a very different category that don't win the same kinds of awards. Despite this, Hagrid's was named the 19th best steel coaster in the world last year. Personally, I don't rank Hagrid's quite so high, mainly because thrills are more important to me than theming. I've always been more wowed by the high speeds and the elaborate sets, so I generally had the mentality that I can see pretty things outside of theme parks, but the thrill and fun of a roller coaster isn't something I get in many other places. Maybe that's just me, and even if I prefer a good adrenaline rush, I still think Hagrid's is a great roller coaster, primarily for reasons excluding the thrills. It's a highly themed ride that aims to suck the rider into the world of Harry Potter. If a Six Flags park had the exact same layout with no theming or onboard audio, the roller coaster would almost definitely be cast aside as a subpar attraction. Some of the elements would be moderately fun, but most people would hardly even consider it a good ride, and even I would expect it to be a whole tier below Hagrid's. This suggests the theming of Hagrid's is very important, and this is where we get to what the video is really about. The title is about how to improve every Six Flags roller coaster, so you probably think I'm about to say the answer is to add theming elements. However, that is not the case. While I do think theming would notably improve nearly every major Six Flags roller coaster, theming is expensive. Hagrid's had a budget of over $300 million, and even though I wouldn't expect any Six Flags coaster to cost nearly this much to theme up, it is still difficult to make additions to hundreds of roller coasters. Even if the chain did invest in theming up all of its rides, or even a select few, it would never be able to avoid comparisons to rides like Hagrid's. The theming would almost definitely be considered cheap, or at the very best, top-tier theming outside of Disney and Universal. Six Flags simply cannot compete with Disney and Universal in this regard. Just look at the staple dark ride of Six Flags parks, Justice League Battle for Metropolis. While the best iterations do have some physical sets that are pretty fun, it is overall a fairly uninteresting shooting dark ride that outclasses very few rides from Disney or Universal. It's a great attraction to have for the family audience, but most families who have been on the superior dark rides will find this one cheap and never feel inclined to re-ride it or even revisit the park. A roller coaster like Hagrid's could never be commissioned by Six Flags unless it got a ton of extra cash and pulled a Hail Mary. Ultimately, while an added focus on theming for Six Flags coasters would be nice, I have a slightly different idea that I think is more feasible and possibly even more powerful. Six Flags is a chain focused on offering its guest attractions that are fun. Hagrid's has other major focuses, but I think most people can agree the ride is quite fun. What makes something fun is hard to pin down and can be subjective, but I believe there is one element of Hagrid's I haven't mentioned yet that is the most important key to its success. The theming wows many and looks great in the marketing, but I think the most important factor in the ride's popularity and acclaim is something I observed when visiting some theme parks in the UK this past summer. That aspect is the story. This is what I'm getting at. Hagrid's transports you into the world of Harry Potter, but it doesn't do this just by making fancy sets and having you be an outside observer riding along the track. It throws you into the story. You are on the motorbike, and you are on an adventure with Hagrid. He interacts through the onboard audio, perilous music plays, the theming elements and even some of the ride elements are tied directly into the story of flying through the Forbidden Forest and the search for magical creatures. This is what makes Hagrid so much fun. It's not style without substance. If anything, the story seems to be a greater focus on the theming. Universal really did craft an engaging adventure that could be told through a roller coaster. Now the question is, what can Six Flags do to tell a story on its roller coasters? They aren't going to make detailed animatronics, and even onboard audio seems unlikely. So what can they do? The answer is simple, but it only really occurred to me when visiting parks in the UK. The best examples come from Alton Towers, and the best of the best here for storytelling is The Wicker Man. The Wicker Man is a moderately thrilling wooden roller coaster with solid intensity and a great sense of speed. I liked the ride a lot, but what impressed me most about the ride was the story it told. To briefly summarize the experience, you walk past a massive wooden effigy of the titular Wicker Man as you enter, and the queue fits the aesthetic without being particularly themed. You then enter a room with a nice animated pre-show, and this explains that you're about to be sacrificed to the Wicker Man by being thrown into the burning effigy. The final room of the queue is eerie and atmospheric, feeling like a place where you might be held before a sacrifice. On the actual coaster, smoke effects are used as the roller coaster passes through the fiery statue, and in the final room as you wait to re-enter the station, the whole place glows orange and the final smoke effect is used, implying you have been engulfed in the flame. The whole experience is masterfully crafted. Just by having the story being thrown into a burning statue, the ride gets an added sense of peril it otherwise wouldn't have. You feel like you're part of the story, about to be sacrificed. Your life is in the hands of the roller coaster. It's kind of incredible, and it makes the ride so much more fun than it would be otherwise. Giving the attraction some character can make them more iconic. The decades of lore surrounding Nemesis, another Alton Towers roller coaster, is a major reason why that roller coaster has such a major fan base. In fact, it is consistently ranked in the same top 50 seal coasters list that Hagrid's is winning in right now. Stories are interesting, and applying them to a roller coaster can do so much for the overall experience. Most Six Flags roller coasters already have intimidating names that can be expanded upon for stories for the rides. Names like Goliath, Viper, and Vortex are very common in the chain, but the rides are never given anything more than a decent entrance sign and maybe a half-baked attempt at making the queue building look the part. I can envision these roller coasters having stories added to them fairly easily. For Goliath, they could put signs or screens in the queue explaining that you're going to go hunt down Goliath, or some sort of Goliath if you don't want the biblical stuff going on, and they could build one statue after the first drop. For Viper, they could make the indoor part of the queue darker, having a more jungle aesthetic to it, and maybe make the ride feel like you're either on the snake or confronting a massive snake, and tell that story through signs in the queue. For Vortex, a ride with an awesome logo in some iterations, make the queue fit that robotic aesthetic, and make the story something about the track being straight when it was made, but bent by a mechanical monster. These simple changes would add a sense of immersion to the rides, the same sort of immersion that makes rides like Hagrid successful. Now, some of you may see issues with Six Flags going this route, especially with pre-existing roller coasters. However, it's important to remember that both Six Flags and Cedar Fair have already done this to some extent on select rides. Allow me to go through some examples of current Six Flags coasters that tell a story. In the process, I'll explain how the story impacts the ride experience, and how that story could be improved. The first that comes to mind is Batman the Ride. Six Flags has 8 roller coasters with this name to my knowledge, and 6 of them are B&M inverted roller coasters. This ride model has the train below the track, so your feet dangle and sometimes seem like they'll be hitting something. The aforementioned Nemesis is an example of the model, and a great example at that. This ride was built in a ravine, and you get right up close to the bottom of it, going by several theming elements like a cool helicopter, some smoke effects, and the massive sculpture of the titular alien creature. This ride has an immersive story, and Batman the Ride is on its way to that. For many iterations of Batman the Ride, the queue takes you through Gotham City for the outdoor portion, and the indoor portion is supposed to be something like the sewers or the underground, and they lead to the Batcave. Some of this looks really nice, but I think there's untapped potential with the ride's story. Six Flags has access to the DC brand for starters, so they name a lot of their rides after Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Reverse Flash, I'm pretty sure, etc. There's typically very little theming, or the theming the rides do have is just signs talking about DC characters, rather than the actual story. Typically, Six Flags just throws the IP into their park, kinda like Disney, but I feel like Six Flags does not utilize DC characters nearly as well as they could. Imagine if Batman the Ride had the same outdoor queue that was supposed to be like Gotham City, but once you enter the train tunnel, the queue stays dark from that point on. There's occasional lights and sounds simulating trains going by. In the loading station, they could add theming to make it look more like the Batcave, and a screen could have Batman explain that there's a bunch of villains going around Gotham City, and you're about to board the Batwing and fly through to help fight them. On the ride, add a few simple statues of the villains and Batman fighting. This would be pretty simple, and it wouldn't be to wow the guests with theming, it would be to service the story, and make the guests feel like they really are on Batman the Ride. It wouldn't suddenly make the rides iconic or anything, but it would improve the ride experience and the re-rideability. Maybe you still aren't convinced, but I believe there are Six Flags roller coasters where the addition of a story can already be seen having an impact. A great example is Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. This is a behemoth of a roller coaster, soaring high above the park and reaching impressive top speeds. In terms of story elements, you hear Superman's theme as you climb the lift hill, and you pass some cutouts of Metropolis buildings throughout the ride. On its own, this is a fun, thrilling roller coaster. With these simple story elements added in, it feels much more like you are Superman flying through Metropolis. The best examples of this, honestly though, are at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, and the one that stands out to me is Joker Carnival of Chaos, a ride where the queue as you go through a crazy scary funhouse before the actual ride. The actual ride is very disconnected from this, but adding that story of the Joker having you go through this funhouse is a really great idea, and this is a flat ride, not even a roller coaster. So think what they could pull off if they had some inspiration and creativity with the stories of their rides. Six Flags could do this with nearly any of their roller coasters, and since some of them are already on the right track, only so much work would need to be done. Most of the rides have queues that are way too big for the lines they get, even the lines they got back when they first opened, so they could improve the queue and therefore guest experience without losing the capacity or anything that they may be worried about. Just a few statues along the ride and a nicely thought out queue with some signs is all it would take to put together a solid storytelling experience on a Six Flags roller coaster. Ultimately, my point is that visiting Alton Towers taught me that a good story can go a long way for a roller coaster. It makes the ride feel more than just an adrenaline rush, and even some of the most thrilling roller coasters out there could benefit from the added creativity and immersion. In terms of practicality, this is something I think could be done to many currently existing Six Flags roller coasters. It would be financially reasonable, and would likely make the rides more worth traveling for. A good story can appeal to any audience, including the family audience the current CEO so desperately wants to win over at Six Flags. With all of that said, I doubt many existing Six Flags coasters will be receiving this sort of upgrade. It just doesn't seem like something the higher-ups would be interested in doing, and for rides that have been around for a long time, it makes sense to believe that a new story would not really do anything for the ride's popularity. I would agree with this. It is unlikely that they would make this improvement for pre-existing roller coasters. However, this concept is not limited to rides that already exist. Future roller coasters could be enhanced by stories that appeal to a wider audience. For example, AlpenFury at Canada's Wonderland. This upcoming launch coaster looks incredible to me. I think the layout seems great, and the fact it goes underneath the park's mountain centerpiece is insane. Think of the stories they could potentially pull off with this layout. It could be like Expedition Everest without strobe lights. I truly believe that a story enhances a ride experience a lot more than Six Flags realizes, and they don't need to go all out with the theming to tell a good story. Despite this, it's important to note that I'm ultimately just saying that this change would improve every Six Flags roller coaster, and I'm not trying to make predictions on whether or not they actually will go this route and make these improvements. Frankly, I don't see the parks putting in a lot of effort to tell a story unless they had a serious financial crisis, and they're watching a random video by me. This video is pretty much just a wish list. I'm not a consultant. There may be other issues I have not thought of, but I'm just saying. I've discovered that stories on roller coasters greatly appeal to me, and I think they can make good rides great. And based on the success of rides like Hagrid's, I'm pretty sure this is the case. Storytelling is the basis of most entertainment, whether it be TV, movies, or video games. And the theme parks like Universal that already recognize this are currently thriving. Maybe, just maybe, Six Flags could find similar success if they embrace storytelling on their future roller coasters. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below your thoughts on this weird proposal, or any other thoughts you might have on this topic in general. Subscribe for more theme park content. I'll see you next time.